Okay, we are back with the biology of Kundalini. We're still in the symptomology. This page is called Symptoms List, page 37 if you're following along in the book. Also, you can find it on lulus.com, Jana Dixon's Biology of Kundalini. We are biting through it. Okay, so she starts with the spontaneous symptoms of Kundalini awakening can be roughly arranged into the various practices of yoga. Yoga practice, or sadhana, which is your spiritual practice, is essentially the speeding up of the flow of consciousness. So that is working with the life force energy and helping to increase its flow. So Kriya Yoga, she says first, muscle twitching, cramps or spasms, shaking, trembling, limpness, rigid contractions, facial contortions, itching, vibrating, pricking, tingling, effervescent bubbles of bliss, tingling, throbbing in left foot and legs. One of the main signs that Kundalini is active. So all of these symptoms, from muscle twisting and cramps and spasms and shaking, through itching and weird face shapes, that's all Kundalini, like increasing and making your body like do different things, right? Hot or cold changes, shooting currents of heat or energy, zigzag or double helix of energy up the spine, prana flow in the central nervous system, so just noticing an increase of that, pulsating sensations in the sacrum, involuntarily laughing or crying or deep sighs, those are all like release sounds, like involuntary, just coming out of nowhere. Abdomen may flatten toward the spine, contractions of vesical organs, the anus contraction is drawn up like a bandha lock. Bad digestion, purging or constipation could all be part of it. False pregnancy feeling as your energy pools in the body. Boy, I noticed that a lot. Chin may press down against the neck to try to lock that. Eyeballs might roll up or rotate. Eyelids might not open all the way despite really trying to because so much energy. Left eyelid flickers, then toward the end of the awakening, then the right one might flicker. So that's the order in which these energies are attempting to balance out. Tongue rises to the roof of the mouth or wants to stretch back. Those are mudras that your body knows. So I would find weird things like that wanting to happen to me for sure. Repetitive popping sensation in the sinus above the palate. Body may twist. Body may bend forward or backwards. I mean, geez, I used to always have to be in a yoga posture of some kind early on. I just would go to it, like my body couldn't stand still. And that's what she's talking about here. Spontaneous yoga asanas and mudras, breathing constriction or heaviness or contraction of diaphragm, unusual breathing patterns, tendency to belly breathe or empathic out breath. Repetitive popping sensation, we already said this one. Racing heart, expansion pains in the heart, which can also feel like heartache, if you're familiar. Let's see. Feelings of levitation or intensified gravity. Radical grounding and associated lethargy or chronic fatigue. That's like your body getting so much energy and you just not knowing how to handle it. So it really lends to the feeling of heaviness or intense gravity, or like it's even pressing on your breath sometimes. Body sense might expand to feel huge or small. Strange aches and head pressures and headaches. That's all part of that. Clenching jaw, yawning, excessive sleep. I mean, you can almost find how any symptom is a part of an awakening because of when you look at what's actually happening in the body. Inability to sleep during hyperactivation, can have higher blood pressure, constant need to walk or exercise like a hyperactivity, dry throat, great thirst, feeling headless, mindless, giddy, heavy, or like you're wearing a helmet. Buildup of pressure on the head or neck or throat or spine, thorax, or even behind the eyes. If you go into deep meditation and you reach like a paralysis, that is also like an intensified Kundalini moment. Numb and pain in limbs, especially left foot and leg. Numbness on the left scalp and down the left face with drooping left eyelid. Years of pain in the throat or in the left foot or shin prior to awakening, that can be really common. Loss of strength in the arms during rapture and heart expansion. Heat, sweat, psychokinetic interference with electrical equipment. I know a lot of people in their awakening would like blow out light bulbs. I had a friend that knocked down an entire glass wall as we were going into a store when his Kundalini was super active. I mean, the entire thing just broke and collapsed right in front of us. It was pretty amazing. Yeah, so, or like computer stuff glitching out when your high vibe is around it. So all of that can happen. Ability to spontaneously draw bolts of lightning from a light bulb or to auto-electrocute oneself with one's own energy while you're asleep. Like you can literally zap yourself. Spontaneously turning on electrical equipment, dim or blow out street lamps, cause pigeons to crash into car windscreens. Yeah, like all of this is you channeling this life force, and it sounds almost like a superhero, right? And it sounds kind of like incredible and like not real. But that is the kind of mystical, weird things that start to happen when you open up to the weird realization that we are not mere humans. You know, we actually have access to a higher dimension of consciousness, and that access comes through our awakening when we access it literally in the physical body. It's like turning on valves that have been closed down to just a trickle, just for basic survival for a really long time, and then they start to like open up and we're flooded with new information. So now she talks about Laya Yoga. Laya Yoga, she says, inner visions, lights, flames, geometric shapes. So if you're entering an awakening through Kriya Yoga, it might look like what we just read, okay? Because that's more like activity in the body. So all the like shoots of electricity and the involuntary laughing, that's a very active way of embodying the energies. Now she's talking about a Laya Yoga, dealing with realms or the inner mindscape. She's saying your inner visions can change to have lights, flames, geometric shapes. Maybe you see deities or saints. You have dream scenes. Inner sound, celestial music is often heard from your right ear. Occasional popping in joints of the skull bones. Buzzing or humming in the ears. Inner voices, spontaneous mantra. Speaking in tongues can be part of this. Vivid dreaming, visions, transcendental visions, everything luminous is scintillating, vibrating, and you're feeling that, and like snake dreams or snake sensations. That's all in the Laya Yoga interpretation of what's going on. And then Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. So this can show up like love with no object arises, so you just have like spontaneous love, devotion, sublime gratitude, uncommon compassion and understanding, tolerance and patience for what is, like you just have this overwhelming sense of compassion and love, enormous faith accompanying the bliss, transcendence of reactive patterns and social conditionings and ego habits, intense sexual arousal without provocation can come because of the love, intensified pleasure, feeling gaseous bubbles from the pelvis, feelings of radiating ambrosial bliss, an aura of nectar, strange activity and bliss in different areas of the head. She's listing all these sensations of a Bhakti Yoga awakening, okay? Bilocation of loved ones through heart navigation, increased ESP, precognitive dreams, telepathy, alchemical preparation for future unknown events, translocal temporal development, linear time transcendence, feeling of entire life reaching nexus point, self-remembering, deja vu, heightened sense. Imagine this experience, okay? This is very much sensual, has a sort of sexual tone, but then also this just heightened bliss, love, devotion, surrender, feeling one with everything. Fragrant smells of roses or peaches from the skin, ability to affect energetic states of others, humans and animals, via a sympathetic resonance. So like being in that bliss state can spontaneously open other people's hearts. This is known to happen during an intense awakening period. And then Jana yoga is the fourth one that we'll talk about in this video today. Jana yoga is where you are very contemplative, because Jana is the self-reflector, the yogi that is wondering about the state of oneself, so self-awareness. So deep questions and answers might arise. Mystic poetry starts to write itself. That happened to me. Important insights, eurekas, scientific and creative solutions, especially in your dreams. The herald of the muse as appearing as a sound or voice in the upper right brain prior to emergence of information. So some people note like a woman's voice, or the sound of the inspiration coming as music or a tone or a voice that's an inspiration. Increased creativity and expression, intensified understanding, finer focus on the most important things, compulsive need to write, psychic ability to open a book at the right page and go directly to the right sentence, so that's also part of this, automatic writing, intellectual masturbation to a Jana yogi is better than sex. She says less ego investment in campaigning and righteous trailblazing, as one's true art comes to the foreground. Although they may be overwhelming at times, symptoms of Kundalini don't mean much other than the body is transforming itself in one way or another. It is what we do with our energy that matters. So these are all different ways that a certain personality type might deal with that same feeling in the body, right? Spiritual experiences and symptoms are not important. What is important is spiritual insight, gnosis, understanding, and growth. To stay on track, we have to become muse-focused rather than symptom and meaning focused. Comprehensive sage insight will come about in time, so don't get too involved mentally, emotionally, or analytically with what you're experiencing. Just let it wash over, enjoy it, and be grateful for the chance to experience it. So she's really just saying that it comes in all these ways. It's really the type of person we are, how we're going to handle it and translate it, and it's up to the people around us too, what mind state they're in, that they can also handle this transformation. So we're going to talk more about that. Today's a little bit shorter. We'll go into exploring the symptoms a little bit more tomorrow, but think about your way. Like if you have not had an awakening yet, are you more an active person? Is Kriya Yoga the way you might notice? Do you already notice body stuff in yourself? And if so, your body might wake you up first in these different sensations and feelings of zaps and breathing change and change in sleep and currents of energy. You might notice that way, and you can identify that's awakening symptoms. Or if you're a Laya yogi, you might be having visions or seeing beings visiting or seeing geometric shapes, then you know that's part of your awakening. If you're more like devotion-oriented person, your awakening might come in just feeling ecstatic states where you suddenly just feel like this amazing energy washing over you, and you're just able to surrender to that love because that's the kind of being you are, and you have this beautiful scent that emerges, and that's all symptoms of awakening too, as a bhakti. And then I had this, like I said, the writing of the poetry. It was just like something that inspired me to more writing, because this muse visited me in that way. This life force energy visited me as a beautiful poem, as a beautiful sunset, as a beautiful song, and I couldn't help but want to emulate that. And so my hands and my mind were open in that way because I was prepared. In some ways, I already had a love of writing. I had a father who loved to the spoken word and was a great speaker and teacher, and that always inspired me. So think about what your type is, and then what things have been going on with you lately, like, or the people you love. Do you notice any of these symptoms? Have you heard them speak of these things? Are you yourself experiencing them? You know, and often in contact with someone else, as she said, going through an awakening, that will be the impetus for your awakening. So if you have not yet contacted that, and again, there's not just one awakening, there's an initial, And then there are many layers that we continue to awaken to. And it's just the first one that can be the most disruptive, or can go on the longest if we're not noticing what it is and honoring it. So it can just like kind of snowball into a really prolonged patterning of some unhealthy stuff, because coping mechanisms and denial and guilt, blame and stuff all gets put on top of something when it's not acknowledged for what it is. And then the other problems are symptoms of the core, which according to Jana Dixon, and in my observation, experience, and awareness, that the core is always the further awakening of our consciousness. That's always what's at the core of anything changing, ever. Ever, ever, ever. So if there's stuff in the way of that growth process, of being able to be your best self and your most aligned self, those things are going to surface and open like wounds to be addressed. Like emergency, this is what I have in the way of my core truth. What are we going to do about it? And to look at the symptoms as actually a symptom of the core wanting to awaken rather than other things wrong, right? Because then here's the wounds. If we're like, oh, cover those wounds up, like, let's make that look better. Let's go admit that we have wounds, and let's talk about our wounds and everything, and just be really steeped in that. Okay, that's one side of it. That's okay, but also to recognize that there's a core issue behind the wound, the desire to return to connection with source, to know oneself deeply, right? And in attempts to do that, we want to shut up the parts of our mind often that are the painful parts or the repeating pattern parts. We want to shut those up. But they are the very revealer of the core issue, right? They're the revealer of the core issue. So, yeah, it's good to notice how these things are coming up for different people, and support, believe, acknowledge if someone's having a weird experience. It's harder to have that experience, that weird experience alone, or for someone to think you're crazy for having it rather than to be supported in it. Like then, yeah, being validated is a really important part of not stifling the journey. So thank you again for joining for this reading today, and we will see you in the next part.